Hello, everyone, and today we are going to discuss why there actually might be two bull runs instead of just one. Within the next year, of course. And it obviously has to do a lot with the Fed stuff. Jerome Powell is stepping down. There are a bunch of people competing for the upcoming race to be Fed governor, obviously, all trying to kiss up to Trump. So he will actually appoint them, but that might not matter because that might be good for us. Well, let's actually look at Jerome Powell's tenure and when he's actually going to step down. So Jerome Powell's term as chair of the Fed ends in May 2026. So that is roughly right now it's almost September, 4 more months this year. So he's out in like 8-9 months basically. So that's his term at the Federal Reserve. That ends at 2026, while his term as governor of the Board of Governors extends until January 2028. Powell's term as chair of the Federal Reserve concludes May of 2026, January 2028. Powell's term as governor of the Board of Governors ends. So he still will have influence, but since he's not actually chair of the Federal Reserve, he won't have the most influence, and whoever Trump appoints will have the most influence. Remember, the rate cut decision is made by a Board of Governors, not just the Fed chair himself. But right now, only 2 governors are siding with Trump in wanting rate cuts. The other 9 are holding back. But Powell did actually say that the environment might warrant rate cuts. So Powell was appointed to his second term as chair in May 2022. He was first appointed in 2018. His role as chair is a 4-year term, while his term as governor is a longer, non-renewable 14-year term. So he was originally appointed to the governorship in 2014. That's why it ends in 2028. And he will serve out his full term as a governor until 2028. So he will still have a vote, but he will not actually be the main voice. So the 2026 replacement is what we're actually looking at for Jerome Powell. So the thing is, he did actually mention at Jackson Hole that the environment might actually be right for the Fed to reconsider its policy decisions. And that people took as he's going to lower rates. Now, that's not 100%. That obviously dependent on both CPI and PPI. So it's not like 100%. He's absolutely, positively going to cut, but the chance of him cutting are pretty great. So we have the ETFs, obviously, like we've been talking about, coming in October, and I think October, November, December is actually going to be a pretty good time. And I do think we're going to have a bull run at that, because I do think we'll at least get one rate cut that'll get people somewhat excited, and they know that the governorship's going to be replaced next year, so I think that will add fuel to the fire, and that way the rate cut, I think like the rate cut, if we have one, will actually contribute. It won't be the sole cause, but it will actually contribute to the rise in prices at the end of this year. Now, after that, I do think there's going to be a bit of a dip between the first and the second bull run, because if I look at the producer price index, it is creeping up. That eventually will probably flood over the consumer price index. The price of oil is remaining low, although if you're in the Midwest, you'll see price of gas going up the next few days, mainly because there's been flooding at the Indiana refinery, and that's a local cause, but it basically supplies like Chicago and a lot of the Midwest. So if you're in the Midwest and oil prices rise by 30-40 cents like it has around here, that's more of a temporary thing, and it will go down after a couple of weeks. After they get the refinery all fixed and stuff, it'll actually go down, but that's not nationwide, so that should not affect CPI or PPI that much nationwide. However, the tariffs most definitely will, and you saw that in the last PPI number report. And of course, I think it's going to continue to come and then over the next few months, which will bleed into CPI. But I think we'll probably get 1 or 2 rate cuts first before that really hammers home, and the cuts have to stop. Now, with the cuts, obviously, and the ETFs, I do think we'll have a pretty good run. But after that, in January, February, we might actually have a little bit of a drop as the inflation starts to tick up a little bit. But despite that, Trump is going to have his new guy in place by June. So essentially, like when we have the meetings next year in July, August, September, whatever, there'll be more rate cuts regardless of what the inflation is, unless it's like super bad, which I don't really expect it to be. So even if inflation's at like 3.54, I think he will actually cut rates, and that will spur more people, especially with inflation, to invest in something like Bitcoin. Because, if there's inflation and the rates are low, no point in going to bonds. There's a lot of money in bonds right now, like a whole lot of money in bonds right now. And since there's so much money in bonds, some of that money is going to come over to both equity and crypto because they need to beat the inflation rate. And it's going to be hard to beat the inflation rate with a low interest rate. So they're not going to be able to keep like the trillions of dollars in bonds if they want to beat the inflation rate. And because of that, they're going to go for more risky investments, and crypto being adopted more by Wall Street and the mainstream is the perfect sponge to absorb all that. Now there's like tens of trillions, I think like 7 to 10 trillion dollars locked up in bonds. Obviously not all of that is coming into crypto. A lot of it will go into equities, but I do believe that crypto will indeed absorb a lot of it when it actually comes to. So I do actually believe that I do actually believe that crypto is going to benefit a lot, like a whole lot, from all of this. And I do actually think that it's going to boost us up, maybe like at the beginning of the second half of next year. So that's kind of my timeline. The Fed governor comes in May. It'll get approved really fast, either May or June. We start cutting immediately in July, August, September. July and September, we have big cuts, maybe by as much as 1 full percentage point, because Trump wants to cut it by 2. And all these guys are basically like trumpets, and they will do whatever he says. So they might actually cut the interest rate all the way down to 1.5 or 1%. That's going to basically trigger inflation. Is going to get housing prices way up again because more people are going to buy houses. Obviously, that messes with the supply and demand, and that will rise inflation like a couple months down the line. But once that initially starts, that I think will trigger like a huge flood of money from like more safe assets like bonds into more risky assets like crypto. And obviously, you also have the 401k that's eligible coming in next year to get into crypto as well. So you could see a flux of several $100 billion into crypto over the short course of a month or two. And I really, really do think that is going to be a definite cause for crypto to slowly rise up in value or quickly rise up in value. So I do think there will actually be 2 pumps instead of 1. I mean, everyone is thinking that the 4-year cycle is going to end towards the end of this year. I don't really know how much effect the 4-year cycle is. And let's be honest now, the 4-year cycle has only happened twice, 2017 and 2021. So there's not that much historical data to actually basically corroborate it. And 2017 and 2021 weren't the same. They peaked at different times, especially for altcoins. And of course, this particular cycle, like we had the first top in like 24, and then the second top was like end of 24 essentially. So this cycle has behaved differently as well. So each cycle has been somewhat different, and there's a significant difference from the last one, especially Wall Street's coming in. And because the interest rate stuff affects so much right now, and we're getting a new Fed governor next year, I think that might actually just be not all that relevant. Now, I would still follow the 4-year cycle somewhat for investing purposes. If, let's say, the price of crypto and alts especially rises towards the end of this year, and you hit your top like in December, and you're afraid of a sell-off, sell some of that bag in December. In fact, sell most of the bag in December and then buy back in a month or two later, because, there's still time between the end of the year and when the new Fed governor comes in. And I don't really know how many people are going to pre-buy the new Fed governor. And if they do, I don't think they'll pre-buy it by more than 1 or 2 months. So if you go out in December, if the price is high, and then you come back in, let's say, February or so, like you come back in like February or so, that could actually be, that really honestly could be the best play, because then you get the first pump in at the end of this year, but you also like sell out when it goes down, and then maybe it drops 20-30%, maybe more, because we've seen that before in like lulls. And then you buy the second bottom and sell the second top, maybe in July or August or around this time next year. I think that scenario is very plausible at this point. Mainly because like the replacement in the Fed governors, of course. Now, like I said, Jerome Powell is going to have a seat on the board until 28, but he won't be the one to call the shots after May of 26. And Donald Trump is surely going to appoint someone whose first quality is essentially loyalty to him. Now, I think like even if we have that second pump, you will want to sell out like towards this time next year, because cutting the rates to 1%, first of all, is going to induce more people to buy houses, which means that the housing market is going to start rising again as much as it did in the previous couple of years, which was pretty insane. Housing accounts for roughly 1/3 of all inflation. So inflation is going to go up regardless. People will also have more demand as easy more money comes back too. So like, stuff like cars might end up costing a lot more as well. So I think overall inflation is definitely going to go up. Because of I think like inflation overall is definitely going to go up after a couple of months. But in that first couple of months, we should actually get a pretty big run. But if you don't sell after that first couple of months and inflation like ends up going up a lot and pulls it back down, you might be waiting for another 4 years. So I think the good sell points may be like at the end of December or mid-December this year, and maybe like around this time next year, maybe a little earlier, because I think there's going to be some severe rate cuts like right after he appoints a new Fed governor. Now, Powell isn't going to cut that much. We know, like I think we're getting basically 25 basis point cut in September, and maybe like another 25 basis point cut in October. Maybe he'll skip the one in October and just do one in December. I'm not really sure. It depends on the producer price index and the consumer price index. But Powell is very cautious. He's always been very cautious all throughout like his entire term. And he's not really going to cut until he's sure. And right now, uncertainty is the name of the game. There's really not that much sure stuff like in the cards right now. So yeah, at this point, I don't think like Powell's going to cut by like 1 or 2 interest rate, a full percentage point or something. But you can damn well bet when that new governor comes into place, he's going to massively cut as to Trump's liking, whatever Trump wants. And with that like 1% interest rate, people are just going to massively buy crypto, massively buy stocks, and that is going to float the market up at least for a while as they move the money from bonds into stocks. So that's why I think we're going to have 2 bull runs. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.